There are moments in history when heaven leans in closer to earth, moments when something sacred passes through time, unnoticed by the world, except by one soul. She was a nun, young, humble, unseen, but she was there. She was the only one present when one of the most revered saints of the modern age, Padre Pio of Pietrelcina, left this world. And what she witnessed in those final moments wasn't just a peaceful death. It was something beyond human comprehension. A silence that roared. A light that couldn't be explained. A sensation that even today, decades later, she says she can still feel in her bones. But let's go back. To understand what happened in that room, we first need to understand who Padre Pio really was. Not the icon, not the image on holy cards, but the man. The living vessel of pain, miracles, and mystery. This is the untold story of the nun who watched Padre Pio die. A story that may shift the way you see death. A story that may awaken something inside of you. A desire to connect deeper with the divine. So take a deep breath. Open your heart. Because once you hear this, you'll never forget it. Before he was Padre Pio, he was just Francesco Forgione, a boy born into poverty in a small village in southern Italy. But from an early age, strange things happened around him. Visions, voices, a presence that lingered in the room long after he prayed. By the time he was a teenager, he was already known among his village as the boy who spoke with God. When he joined the Capuchin friars, he was only 15. He chose the name Pio after Pope Pius I, but no one, not even him, knew what path awaited. His life became one of relentless physical suffering. He received the stigmata, the 5 wounds of Christ, while in deep prayer. These wounds bled for 50 years, never becoming infected. Doctors were baffled. Scientists couldn't explain it. But even more astonishing were the countless miracles attributed to him. He could read hearts during confession. He bilocated, appearing in multiple places at once. He healed the sick, many of whom were terminal. He was seen levitating during Mass. And yet, Padre Pio never sought attention. He lived in a remote monastery in San Giovanni Rotondo and rarely left. He endured doubt, rejection, slander, even from within the church. But he remained humble and obedient, offering his pain as a sacrifice. To his followers, he wasn't just a priest. He was a spiritual father, a living portal to heaven. And to this nun, the one we'll meet soon, he was the soul who changed her forever. She had always felt different. Even as a young girl, she was drawn to silence. Not out of fear, but fascination. While others played, she prayed. She whispered to the sky, convinced someone was listening. By the time she entered the convent, she had already read about Padre Pio. But it wasn't until her first visit to San Giovanni Rotondo that she understood just how real his presence was. They didn't speak at first. She simply watched from a distance. But one day, as she was about to leave the chapel, he turned to her and said quietly, "You carry a light, but you've hidden it. God is asking more from you." She didn't understand what he meant, but that sentence would echo in her soul for the rest of her life. From that day on, whenever she visited the monastery, Padre Pio would call her by name. Not just her given name, but the name she had never told anyone, the one she used only in prayer. That's when she knew. This wasn't just a man of God. He was a mirror of heaven. And as the years passed, their encounters deepened. He would offer her spiritual advice. Sometimes cryptic, sometimes stern, but always rooted in love. Then one day she received a letter. Padre Pio was dying, and he had requested her presence. Before we step into the most sacred part of this story, I want to ask you something. If this journey is touching your heart, even just a little, pause for a second. Hit the like button. Subscribe to this channel. It helps us reach more souls with these messages of faith, light, and truth. The room was quiet. Too quiet. But not empty. There was something in the air, a stillness so complete it felt alive. The nun had entered the monastery many times before, but never like this. Never with that weight in her chest. That gentle tremble in her hands. Padre Pio was lying in his modest bed, his face pale but peaceful. There were no crowds. No noise. Just the sound of his breathing, slow, uneven, like waves receding before the tide disappears. She sat beside him, silently. No words passed between them. But she would later say, "He didn't have to speak. I could feel his soul praying." On the wall hung a wooden crucifix, weathered by time and touched by thousands of prayers. The same crucifix Padre Pio had meditated on for years. His rosary lay gently across his chest, fingers twitching ever so slightly over each bead. And then it began. A presence, not physical, not even emotional, but something transcendent. The nun felt a warm sensation on her shoulders, like a gentle light descending. She later described it as an invisible fire, soft, holy. As if the angels were filling the room in preparation. Padre Pio's breathing grew fainter. One breath, another, then stillness. And in that silence something happened. It was as if the entire room breathed with him, she would say. And when he exhaled for the last time, the walls, the floor, even my bones, felt it. It wasn't death. It was arrival. She didn't cry. There were no tears, just awe, a holy fear. A certainty that she had just witnessed a passage between worlds. For a moment everything stopped. And then, she saw light. Not the kind that hurts the eyes, but one that pierces the soul. A radiance that seemed to glow from within Padre Pio's body, even though he lay still. It was like heaven opened, she whispered once in confession. But only a sliver. Just enough for me to understand he wasn't gone. He was being welcomed. Some say she had a vision. Others say she was in shock. But she never doubted what she experienced. A fragrance, like roses, frankincense, and pure mountain air, filled the room. The kind of scent that doesn't come from flowers, but from something not of this world. She felt it swirl around her, almost lifting her heart out of her chest. She didn't know whether to pray or simply be silent. But in that silence she heard something. A whisper. Not in her ears but in her soul. Be still, for the servant of God has been called home. It wasn't grief. It was glory. And for the rest of her life, that moment would define everything she believed. When other nuns asked her what it was like, she would often pause and say, "He didn't die. He simply stepped across." Padre Pio's body remained on the bed, hands folded over his rosary. But his soul, his presence, it was everywhere. In the glow of the window. In the breath of the candlelight. In the silence that was no longer empty, but full of eternity. She had witnessed the crossing of a saint. If you're still with us, I know this story is touching something deep within you. These are the mysteries that shape our souls. If you feel the light growing in your heart, please subscribe. Not just for us, but so you never miss a moment like this. A moment that reminds you of who you really are. After Padre Pio's passing, the nun didn't speak for 3 days. Not because she was traumatized, but because she was full. Full of silence. Full of light. Full of the presence that had walked with her through death and beyond. When she finally spoke, it was to say this. He gave me the gift of witnessing holiness. Now I must live it. She returned to her convent, quieter than before, but also more alive. Her eyes carried a new weight. Her voice, when she sang, made other sisters weep. People would say they felt peace just by being near her. She never made herself known. Never published a book. But those who came near her, seeking comfort, guidance, or answers, found something else instead. A window. Into eternity. She would often hold people's hands and say, "You don't need to see heaven to believe it. You just need to remember where you came from." And every time she remembered the moment of Padre Pio's death, she described it the same way. The veil was thin. The air was holy. And death wasn't scary at all. What if death isn't the end? What if it's a threshold, not into darkness but into light? What if saints are not just people from the past, but mirrors of what we're meant to become? Padre Pio's death, witnessed by one soul in a room barely lit, speaks louder than 1,000 sermons. It tells us something modern life has forgotten. That holiness is real. That eternity is closer than we think. That death is not a wall but a doorway. And through that doorway walked a man who spent his entire life preparing for it, suffering for it, loving through it. He was not afraid, because he knew where he was going. And the nun who watched him go? She was forever changed. Not because she saw something new, but because she saw something we've all forgotten. That we are not alone. That something sacred is watching us. And that when the time comes, we will be called home too. If this story awakens something in you, don't let it fade. Share this video. Leave a comment. Let others know that they are not alone in seeking something greater. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. Let's walk this journey together until the day we're called home too.